hoopers. Today I'm going to show you how to make a rainbow LED hoop that has 21 LEDs. It's got 3 in each color, and what's nice about this hoop is that there's no soldering involved and there are no switches. The hoop turns on and off by opening it, putting the battery in, and then closing it. It's also really light. It's 5/8 inch outer dimension polypro tubing, but you can make it with HDPE if you prefer that. And you use one small AAA size battery. So it's much lighter than most of the other tutorials out there. It does include a few LEDs that need resistors, but I'll go over that, and they're pretty easy to do. So I hope you enjoy, and thanks for watching. Let's go make some hoops. Okay, so now I'm going to prep the wire, and when I make a hoop that has resistors or has LEDs in it that need resistors, I prep the wire a little bit differently than I do in a hoop that doesn't need resistors. So I'm using 22 gauge speaker wire, and what I'm going to do to start is split the wires, and I just use a scissor to cut between them. And then you just pull them apart like that. And you'll want to do that for as much length as you need. Okay, then, one thing, it's kind of hard to tell, but on the wire, one of the wires has a white coloring on it and the other one doesn't. And I'm going to use the white one for the negative wire. And the other one is going to be positive. And so sometimes what I do, just so I can make sure I'm doing the right one, is I mark the positive one with just a red marker. Okay, so we're going to start with the negative wire. And I'm going to leave about 5 or 6 inches on the end. And then I'm going to mark. And then I'm doing my LEDs every 5 inches. And if you need to do yours, you know, with a little more space or a little less space, you'll have to adjust for that. So I'm just marking every 5 inches with the marker. And you'll want to do that, you know, all the way down for all of your LEDs. And I'm using 21. Then you find the mark, and you take your wire stripper and squeeze, and I don't know if you can see that or not, but it sort of splits the wire, or yeah, cuts and splits the wire. Then you want to do that all the way down. And if you have to, you can pull the wires apart a little bit more. Okay, so do that for all your LEDs. Once you have your wire all stripped and ready to go, and this is the negative wire again, you're going to start attaching your LEDs. And I'm going to start with pink, and then I'm going to purple, then blue, then green. And even though these are white LEDs, I'm going to color them later, and I'll tell you more about that later. So start with a pink one. Now on the LEDs, you'll notice one has a longer leg and a smaller leg. The longer leg is the positive or anode, and the shorter one is the cathode, the negative. And you can also tell that the negative side has a notch on the LED bulb. I'm not sure you can see it or not, but it's got like a flat, it's flatter on that side. Okay, so since I'm doing the negative side first, okay, so I take my LED and I'm just going to wrap, you can split the legs a bit, and I'm just going to wrap the negative part around the stripped wire and then bend it back. So hopefully you can see that. And that's all there is to that. You can also test these as you go along, because sometimes, I mean, since they all look the same, you may not be sure that you're getting them in the correct order. So what I do is I strip off the end of the negative wire and then attach it to a battery. You can see I've got a battery in the battery holder here. And then just touch, and you'll see that it's indeed it's a pink LED. And you can go along like that and just test them and make sure your color order is correct. I forgot to add, if you're checking your LEDs and you have the ones that need the resistors, you're going to need a resistor to check it too. So I usually take the resistor and just clip it to the positive wire, and then just use the positive to touch it and make sure. You can see that one's yellow. For the purple color LEDs, I don't use the UV purple ones anymore because they're not very bright. So what I've been experimenting with and seems to work, I'm going to take a purple Sharpie and just color. This is the white. This is just a white LED. I think it's a bright white LED. And I just color it. And that usually comes out a nice purple color. For the LEDs that need resistors, those are the red, orange, and yellow ones. And on the package, at least these, you can see they're marked with the specs, so you know what you'll need. And for these particular ones, I've got 68 ohm resistors, and I think they're 1/4 inch. You can get them online, or Radio Shack has them. And in order to calculate what kind of resistor you're going to need, there are several resistor calculators online. Maybe I'll list some links below, and that'll help you figure out what you need to use. When you go to add your resistors to the red, orange, or yellow ones, this is what I do. I take the resistor and I cross it over the LED, over the positive lead, and then I just twist, and then I fold or bend in the ends like that, and then I bend the resistor over. You don't want to crease it too much because you don't want the wire to break, but just bend it over. Basically, I just want to keep it away from the LED. Now to wire up the positive wire. So what you might want to do is take some tape and tape the ends together. Oops. So I've just, with Scotch tape or whatever tape you have, taped them together. That way it should keep the spacing nice and keep them, even. Okay, and this is why I do them separately. I don't measure them at the same time, do them at the same time, because for the first couple it's going to be fine because the first, I think, 4 of them don't have resistors, and we'll go along. And then once we get to the resistor, the measurement is a little off. So just go and mark to cut it or to strip away a space that lines up with the negative side. And then twist your wire. Same thing here. Try to keep the wires even. So wrap it around, pull down the coating if you have to, and then wrap it back up like that. So go ahead and do that for the next few. Before I start wiring up the resistor LEDs, I want to just do a little test. Again, you can just strip off the end here. And this is the positive wire because I've marked it with red, so I know that's positive. And then I'm just going to touch to the negative wire. I don't know if you can see all of them, but so that's what we have so far. And you can go along and test if you need to, just to make sure everything's working correctly. When you get to the LED that has the resistor, you're pretty much just doing the same thing. You're going to keep the wires as parallel as you can to each other, and then mark about here to do your stripping. And then it's the same thing. You just strip. Keep the wires as straight as you can. And then just wrap the resistor wire around and then bend it back up. So that's what I have. And again, there's probably other ways to do this. That's just the way I do it. Let's do a close-up. Once you've got them all wired, just hook up the battery and check to make sure everything is in the right order and everything is lit. And I think we have everything finished and ready for taping. To start taping, you'll want some good electrical tape. And usually what I use is this white tape. But a couple years ago, I found this clear electrical tape. It was actually at Walmart. And I love this. It's much better because it's transparent and it doesn't block any of the light. But you can't get it anymore, or at least I can't find it anywhere. So if anyone knows where you can get this, please let me know. But I've searched and searched and can't find it. Anyway, so the white tape is fairly common, as you probably know. And I wouldn't suggest using a black or a colored tape because once the circuit's in the hoop, and it's not so much that you'll see the colored tape through the hoop, it's more so that when the light is on, it reflects off the white, as opposed to if you had black or another color, it wouldn't reflect as well, and you'd have less light. Okay, so to start taping, I'm going to go ahead and use the clear and pull off about 1.5 inches to start with. And then, this is one of the LEDs without the resistor. So I put the tape between the two legs and get it up as close to the light, close to the bulb as I can, and then I wrap it, I fold it over. Hopefully you can make that out okay without being in white tape, but I just literally just taped it to itself. And then I usually wrap it maybe once, and again stay as close to the bulb as you can. And then I come up and wrap the other side. Oh, I think I ran out of tape. You may want to do a little bit longer piece of tape if you're going to do it this way. But I think I got it. So maybe like 2 inches, that'll give you a little bit more. And you just want to make sure that no wires are going to be touching. And then it's all covered. So now to wrap one of the LEDs with the resistor, start the same way with a little bit longer piece of tape. Start with the negative leg without the resistor and fold it over wrap it around once. Oops. And then do the same thing you did before. Just wrap it around everything at the top. You're getting as close as you can to the bulb. Pressing it down, make sure it's nice and tight and everything is covered. And then take another little piece. This one can be a smaller piece. And just wrap that, the part from the resistor. Same thing, fold it over and then wrap it around. And you just want to make sure that everything is covered, everything is taped. All the bare wire is taped and secure. So in the past, I've used bubble wrap to wrap the circuit in, and what I do is I just mark off about 1.5 inches. Doesn't have to be exact. And just cut that into strips. And I take the circuit and I start right at the first LED, and I do it with the bubbles on the inside. That way it will slide through the hoop much easier, or through the tubing much easier. And I just use clear tape. This is a packing tape. You can probably use Scotch. And I just wrap the hoop. I just wrap the circuit as tightly as you can, because with the 5/8 inch tubing, it is pretty thin and hard to squeeze through. So you just go along, and I usually tape around where the LEDs are, and then you can put a little piece of tape in between too, just to keep it tight. Recently, someone told me about this plastic sleeving that they use to wrap their LEDs in. So I'm actually going to try that instead, and we'll see how it goes. So this is what I use to pull the circuit through the hoop. It's basically just a fishing weight on the end of a string, like a nice sturdy string. Just make a slip knot in the end here. Stick the wire through, and then just tie once. You don't really need anything other than that. Just make sure it's thin enough to get through the tubing, and then bend the wires down like that, so when you pull it through, it pulls through easy. Just make sure your knot's strong enough to hold, and you may need to tie something else. And then just pull it through the tube. Okay, I pulled the circuit through the hoop. You can see the end sticking out now. So the next step is to get the polycarb connectors in there. And I know they're a little tight, so it's going to be a little tricky, but I'm going to just string them through. That's not too bad. Push them in about halfway. Come on. I'll have to use a hammer to do that. I'll probably use like a rawhide or something that won't damage the end of this. Next, what I'm going to do, now that I have the connectors in about halfway, I'm going to mark a spot where I'm going to drill a hole for the rivets, sort of halfway between there. And what I'll do to protect the wires, because I'm literally going to drill, you know, right down in there, and you can see how the wires are underneath it. I have a metal strip that I made that I've sort of curved here, and I'm going to slip that in there to protect the wires. And I don't even know that you need a curved part, but you just stick that in there, and then I'm going to go drill the holes with the Dremel. So I've drilled the holes in the tube and then the connector with a 1/8 inch bit with a Dremel. Now I'm going to rivet and these are 1/8 inch aluminum rivets that I use. And I like them to be 1/8 because it gives it more room. Now we're ready to add the 2 push buttons in the connectors. We're going to do one on each side. And I just want to talk a little bit about these. I think these are the extra small ones that I get from Hoop Supplies. I think they're extra small. I'll double check. And I'll put links to all this in the information below as well as on my site. So what I did was I had holes drilled in the ends, and I'm going to use little tiny screws to connect the springs to the ends. And you can see these are the ones that I've done already. These little screws, I think they're 1/80s. I'll have to double check, but I think you could probably get away with little bigger ones, maybe 256 screws. And when I screw them in, I have little nuts in there too, and I epoxy them so that they, of course, so they won't come off. I would glue them somehow so they don't come unscrewed while you're hooping. Let's see what else. And then these are the little battery springs. For this connector piece, or battery holder, whatever you want to call it, put the wires through there. I have the connector piece in the middle. Then you want to make sure it's lined up straight. I'm going to mark a hole for the push buttons. And I'm going to do it, here's where the connector ends, and I'm going to do it like right in the middle. Here's where the connector ends, and I'm going to do it right in the middle. And then I'm going to drill one hole for each side. Then you take your push buttons. Now also with these push buttons, I've hammered the top of the head down a little bit. That gives you a little bit more room to, because you have the wires underneath the push button. So you want to stick the push button in like that. Now the push button will hold the wire underneath. That's what holds it in place. Now to do the wiring, you need to decide which end is going to be your negative and which end is going to be your positive. So I've decided this end is going to be my positive, and we'll start with that. So I usually mark it with some positive X's and some red, just so I know. And then I mark the positive wire. I've cut the negative wire down a couple inches, and then I tape the end of it because it's just going to be tucked back in here. And I leave it like that so that in case you need to pull the circuit out and make some adjustments or change out an LED or whatever, you can do that. So this wire will just go in here. You just need to tuck it in. And you want to make sure that it's, you know, you can still do the push button, which I can. So tuck it in as much as you can, and I'll probably go back later on and like take a screwdriver or something and push it in there a little further, but you get the idea. And you want to do the same on this side, only with the positive wire. You're going to tuck the positive wire in. So let's go ahead and mark those. Okay, this is the negative because it has a white stripe. This is the positive, and this positive wire we're not going to be using. So cut it down. Put a piece of tape on it. And then we'll tuck that back in there. Okay. So now we have this negative side here. I'm going to mark that. And the positive side here. Now what we'll do is, I think let me trim this down a little bit, and then I'm going to strip the end first. Okay, I'm going to cut it down to, I don't know, leave about 2 inches on the end, 2 or 3 inches. Maybe 2 is better. And then you're going to strip it. Okay, you can see I've stripped it down quite a ways. Okay, then you want to sort of wind this wire so it's not all fragmented. Then all I do is I wrap this wire around the spring here so it has a good connection, and it stays on pretty well. Occasionally you may want to check it. So there we have that's the negative end. Sometimes you may need to, you know, adjust this down. You may need to bend the battery spring down. You'll have to see how the battery aligns, but you can push that around a little bit and see if it makes a better connection for you. But we won't know until we put the battery in. Okay, moment of truth here. You'll want to mark, at least for now, at least I do, I just mark which side is which. I just usually mark X's for the positive side. Put the connector on. Got my AAA size battery here. It's a 3.7 volt. This is a positive end, so I'll go ahead and stick that in there. And then close it up. And there we go. Good shape. Thanks for watching. I hope it was helpful, and happy hooping.